Okay. Hi, welcome to the Screensaver Virtual Poetry Festival. I'm one of the hosts, JC Dia,
And I'm the other, I'm Miriam OJ.
and we're introducing.
Ariana Reines. So Ariana is a poet, playwright, and a translator. So she has a lot of poetry books, including The Cow, Coeur de Lion, Mercury, Tuesday, Beyond Relief, The Origin of the World, Ramayana, Tiffany's Poems, and most recently a sandbook. She's taught at Tufts University, Columbia University, the New School, and the Jack Kerouac School of Disembodied Poetics at Naropa University.
Am I supposed to speak? Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. So hi. I guess so we're streaming through YouTube? Is that how
Yeah.
this works? Okay. I know you just said that, but like Mercury retrograde and I'm easily confused. Um, so I'm gonna read a few poems, probably for about a half hour. Um, I think I don't know why I just said the time. That's like a weird thing to say at the beginning. But yeah, I'm gonna read some poems for you. The first poem that I read is from kind of earlier in the year. Um, it doesn't always feel totally apposite. It's a poem that um, it's a poem that I wrote after a friend who's a poet had an experience of being Zoom bombed. Um, and I'm reading it today because a friend and student of mine had that experience where they are teaching recently and asked me for this poem. So it's called The Wind and the Singer Had to Pass Through Her Heart. And it's from April of this year. I sort of, oh shoot, all the screens went away. Everything is acting really retrograde, isn't it? Okay, I lost you. Did you guys lose me? I hope you didn't lose me. Okay.
We're still here.
Good. Good. Um, I guess, you know, in the spirit of beginning in the middle, I just want to say thank you to Pace and to Dana, Jay, and Tina, and to everyone who put this incredible festival together. It's really amazing, and I'm very sad that I don't get to experience the whole experience of it, like all of you, and being in physical space. And I just want to say that I also, the last time I went to a poetry reading, at Pace, it was Alice Notley. So that's pretty amazing. So thank you for being an amazing wildlife preserve for some of the wilder poets that exist and for coming together for this today. The wind and the singer had to pass through her heart. I saw two robins playing out my window. I don't know how to tell the truth to you. In light like this, white as a dish, the wind and the singer had to pass through her heart. The thought he won't call is the most boring idea in the world. Moving from room to room, I thought, the thought you won't call is a brain damaging thought. The wind and the singer had to pass through her heart. I couldn't watch the Aretha movie. I was sobbing from the first note in the preview. And I had so many things to tell you, but now that I'm here, I don't know how. Jolted by the sound of my housemate unclamping the door, the smell of her body, burnt hair and spiced cooking, finches screaming, just like I remembered. Finches like a mother and father from Massachusetts fighting. My brother told me my mother asked to stay the night. He said no. I said no and walked away. He texted me. A familiar blank exhaustion unfurled in the back part of me. In the nether part of every cell in me, the lights went out. I wanted to lie down. I wanted to go to sleep. I consoled myself with a simpler thought. He won't call, I thought, moving from room to room. I texted my brother a red heart. What more could I say? He told me he gave her more of the supplies I had sent. Adult undergarments, alcohol wipes, gloves, masks. A few days earlier, she had written me an email. I am guzzling vodka, she reported cheerfully, believing that in this way she can disinfect her throat and lungs. And I spray Lysol and wait 15 seconds before sitting down on any toilet. I don't know how to tell you these things, report them. They are like a face that won't even fit on itself. A face like a dinner plate whose contents are sliding off. Upon the palm of a distracted waitress, 5 hours into her brunch shift, who can only think one thought, he won't call. She may yet turn out to be a poet. I am not, as they say, in a space to make earnest pronouncements about our predicament. I repress the death in me, called my mother, guzzling her vodka and spraying her Lysol. And when I go to CVS to MoneyGram her, I get hot under my mask and resentful. I hate her for having done this to me my whole life. I still remember the day she tried to sell me pantyhose. There is poverty, and there is the system. There is mass death, and there are its children. My mother was once a magnificent woman. The wind and the singer had to pass through her heart. A friend told me this morning of something bad that happened to her yesterday while she and another poet were giving a reading on Zoom. Someone showed a baby crying, and then the crying baby filled the screen. And then certain parts of a man were shown. And then he used those parts to rape that baby. This is what my friend told me she saw. This is what was shown to my friend, a poet, as she tried to read her poems on Zoom last night. Later this morning, as I thought about this poem, I wondered if what she was shown was really done live, or if the person seeking to do harm was showing a recording. Because when I mentioned what had happened to another friend in Europe, she had used the word porn, an inadequate, inaccurate word for this kind of harm. But it was my friend's use of this inadequate word that made me realize I don't know if the person really did those things, and that I felt slightly comforted thinking it had been a recording. And I did not like that this thought of it having been a recording that shattered my friend last night made me feel a little calmer. When my friend told what she told me, I began to cry. I think I'm going to vomit, I said, but I did not vomit. We have to pray, I said. Dazed, I sat there in bed, typing words to her on Instagram. Misery, I typed, and evil, destruction and death. My father hurt me when I was little, my friend told me. He hurt me like that. I had not known that. She had the feeling she had been targeted for her feminism. You must not think this was about you, I said. This had nothing to do with you. I pleaded with her. You must not internalize it. You must not take it personally. You must not let this evil inside you. I said these things and others I perhaps should not have said. And she said other things too. Rape is an attempt to destroy the soul, I said. Even the angels did it to Eve. I said this and still other things, and I should have been quiet. I think, I said, that we come to this planet to fight for our soul. All souls, said my friend. All souls, I echoed. Ariana, she said, I have to go. She said she would take a bath and cook a tagine. We had commiserated on the danger of asceticism and our taste for it. We had agreed that women, that we must continue to be kind and playful, warm and alive, and to guard against the severity of Simone Weil, and to guard against the severity of Weil's sorrow. Will you write about it? I had dared to ask. I don't know, said my friend. I let her go. The wind in the singer had to pass through her heart. The wind in the singer had to pass through her heart. The wind in the singer had to pass through her heart. The wind in the singer had to pass through her heart. How can I tell you what happened? It should have been something I could face. The last time I saw my mother, it was Christmas. And even though I have seen everything, it was a degradation I simply could not see any further, and I could not see it again. I just couldn't see it. My brother has been seeing it, and I believe it has damaged him permanently. I cannot look at her. I cannot face her. I can no longer take her hand, not because of the virus and not because of the law, but because she forsook herself day by day and year by year for 20 years and for 30 years and breath by breath and doggedly, and now it is too late for me. Must it be? Wrote Beethoven inside his 16th string quartet. It must be, he wrote. The wind in the singer had to pass through her heart, so the singer could not betray her heart. A beggar like me can make no such sound. A liar like me can make no such sound. My biggest fear, said a friend, is that this will end before we learn our lesson. Another friend, who lived through AIDS, said, no, honey, we never and will never learn our lesson. But I tried to tell him this could be different, that our lives were patently more true than they were before, that I would never go back to the old way, that I know how much of my soul I have given away, and I know what has become of us, and I am a woman who left her mother to rot. And I dared to go to Harvard as though that could wash me. It would never wash me. I went because it sounded romantic, and I believed it might calm me, and it did calm me. I'm no saint, I'm not even a very good woman. And lately, I'm happier than I've ever been. Less of a liar, gentler with the brute truth, simpler in the pursuit of my errand. And I am not a great singer. I am not even a singer at all. God attacking our lungs. I do love the birds. So now I'm going to read you a poem from, I think it's from last month. Then I'll read you a little bit from a sandbook. Sorry. It's so funny how this was just here and then it disappeared. Don't disappear. Okay, here we go. The Book of Life. No, actually, the first word emerged deep in the bowels of the human throat, and forged in longing and envy has now attained majority, and like a Christ is rising, gagging, pointing to its second wound, the better to distract me. All my life you've taught me to mourn the sun. Never mind that this isn't even my religion. Then after stealing my children, you hacked away my reproductive organs. You never believed me capable of grief on behalf of my own immensity, and caused to orbit all about my head the mouths of those white women rich enough to fatten their lips with silicone, and bade them shape woken syllables on the accumulating apps of your fortune. Natural beauty dies the deaths you innovated for it. It was catastrophe you wanted, for only catastrophe could arouse you now, me and my sisters, slick in the semen of your eye. And even at this late date, I was astonished to find that for all that, you'd left my throat intact. Having recourse now only to gagging, we realized in horror in the midst of our protest that we were still causing you pleasure. The gigantic, endlessly whipped mysticism of women is the single most misunderstood phenomenon in the universe, preceding the original man. We fasted but could not starve it, corseted it, shat out babies and gave them suck, lost our will to live, stayed in bed with the soaps, or burned ourselves on the pyre of your psychedelic awakening. Your psychedelic awakening and your sexual revolution, after which, pregnant and needing to make a living, we decanted our pussy into strenuous yogas and increased purchasing power, mindfully causing gentle kales and gem lettuces to revolve in your guts, and our every feeling now the fodder for a robot that would better understand how to bring you joy, a joy you would perfect just a few days after our death, in the polyps and viscera of a pain you will never understand. It took you all of 15 seconds to come inside us, and still we believed there was hope for you, Meister Bluebeard, Lord Google, Father Time, the balding egg of your skull brined in celestial juice. What? It's just a cup of honey. What? It's only money. What a stupid situation in which to be becoming more and more beautiful. Look, I didn't make the law, plumped and slick with spit. I'm stuck in the same prism you are, seeing my way around you like a solitary citizen squinting around the girth of the Bastille, so high you can't get over it, like the taut belly of a Pierpont, so low you can't get under it, polished cue ball drum skin she gonna blow. When the planet rises to the level of its mother's, pleasure will have a new name. It will no longer be this bastard you. It will no longer recognize my lord you. See, boiling with drowning men, Estrella del Mar, when the tip of my tail split in two, I bled. You told me I had the right to remain silent. I have just received unsolicited pics of myself as a girl. They were sent by a woman who once babysat me. On one, I find the unmistakable look of lechery on my fat, Jewish little face. The second I see it, this look becomes a book and flies up before I can stop it into my scar, to nest there with all the self-importance of a plump little rook settling its feathers under itself in the attitude of, it's a fact, bitch. Copulation brought me into this world. Sex is apparently the self-same power my culture still cannot comprehend, blaming the parody of inner knowing that is the weeping eye of your dick on us. What a bore. Tituba, 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 tituba. The Puritan gallstone has not passed. The scarlet letter is unredeemed. No, sir. No, sire. I was attracted to what you're calling the sacred because it was trash, and you're the man who trashed it. and because it could be accessed online free of charge and without initiation, and because I too was the refuse of this world, monopolizing only profit, you collectivized your true wage. The shame, consternation, and self-disgust proper to you has washed up at my door. Your wage, your wage, your wage. Asshole, I have come here to return to you your wage. A partial history. Long after I stopped participating, those images pursued me. I found myself turning from them, even in the small light before dawn, to meet the face of my own body, still taut and strong, almost too strong a house for so much shame. Not mine alone, but also yours and my brother's, lots of people's. I know it was irrational, for whom I saw myself responsible and to whom I wished to remain hospitable. We had all been pursuing our own disintegration for so long by then that by the time the other side began to raise a more coherent complaint against us, we devolved with such ease and swiftness it seemed to alarm even our enemies. By then, many of us had succumbed to quivering idiocy, while others drew vitality from new careers as public scolds. Behind these, middle management professors were at pains to display their faultless views, lest they too find censure, infamy, unemployment, and death at the hands of an enraged public. Individuals in such pain and torment and such confusion hardly anyone dared ask more of them than that they not shoot. And in fact, many of us willed them to shoot, and some of us were the shooters, and shoot we did, and got us square in the heart and in the face, which anyway we had been preparing these long years for bullets and explosions and whatever else. A vast unpaid army of self-destructors, false comrades, impotent brainiacs who wished to appear to be kind. Everything we did for our government and the corporations that served it, we did for free, in exchange for the privilege of watching one another break down. Sometimes we were the ones doing the breaking. We would comfort one another afterward, congratulating each other on the fortitude it took to display such vulnerability. The demonstration of an infirmity followed by a self-justificatory recuperation of our own means and our own ends, in short, of ourselves and our respect for ourselves. This amounted to the dominant rhetoric of the age, which some called sharing, which partook of modes of oratory and of polemic, of intimate journals and of statements from on high issued by public figures whom at one time or another we all mistook ourselves for. Anyway, it wasn't working. None of it was working. Not our ostentation and not the uses we put our suffering to, the guilt and schadenfreude-based attention we extracted from our friends and followers, and even the passing sensation of true sincerity, of actual truth, quickly emulsified into the great and the terrible metastasizing whole. To the point it began to seem wisest to publish only within the confines of our own flesh. But our interiors had their biometrics too, and were functions not only of stardust, the universe as we now were prone to addressing the Godhead, but also of every mean and median of the selfsame vicious culture that drove us to retreat into the jail of our own bones and the cramped confines of our swollen veins and ducts in the first place. Our skin was the same wall they talked about on the news, and our hearts were the bombs whose threat never withdrew. Images could drop from above like the pendulum in the pit in the pendulum, or killer drones to shatter the face of our lover into contemporaneous pasts, futures, celebrities, and other lovers, all of whom our attention paid equally in confusion and longing, and a fleeting sense like passing ghosts of a barely remarked upon catastrophe that was over both before and after it was too late. We were ancient creatures, built for love and war. Everything said so. And we could not face how abstract it was all becoming, because it was also all the opposite of abstract. It was our flesh, our mother's bloodied forehead on the floor of Penn Station, and wherever we hid our face, amid a crowd of stars, as for example Yeats once put it. And for stars, insert celebrities or astrology here, your choice. And even when we closed our eyes, all this was all we looked at, every day, all day. It was all we could see. We were lost in a language of images. It was growing difficult to speak, yet talk was everywhere. Some of us still sought to dominate one another intellectually, still others physically, others psychically, or some of all of the above, everything seeming to congeal into bad versions of sports by other means, and sports by that time was the only metaphor left that could acceptably be applied to anything. The images gave us no rest, yet failed over and over, despite the immensity of their realism, to describe the world as we really knew it, and worse, as it knew us. Okay, so just two more poems and then we're going to kind of talk. I'm often like in a real reading and like a regular reading where I can like see you and where we can actually interact. I really like to talk a lot in between poems. When I'm not in a total trance, which some of these poems do sort of induce. But it's weird for me to pretend to talk and like banter, I guess, with you without being able to see you and interact with you. So this is me hemming and hawing and like extended clearing my throat. I'm just going to read these two poems and then hopefully we can actually have some like relay, which would be fun. And the sun is going to keep coming and going, so I'll keep getting dark and light. Let me just open the window. The wind sounds really good. I'm going to read with the wind. Okay. Arena. Because that light was not like the others, making us seem to be becoming a place. And because on a traffic island the sun had filled me, and because my mother was crazy, and because she was sometimes sane, and because I was in love and then I wasn't in love anymore, and because I was hungry, and because I needed to party, and because I was grieving, and because I had studied the Dust Bowl, the architecture at Delphi, Judaic and Islamic legends of Moses, Midianite theology, the history of agriculture, Kundalini yoga, Alan Savory's and competing theories on desertification reversal, ancient and contemporary methods for ruminant grazing, grasslands and myths of grasslands, those Hopi stories that can be found in books, Roman haruspicy, Hellenistic astrology, the life of the Marquis de Sade, one or two novels, one or two volumes of poetry, Bulgarian choral singing, elements of contemporary sculpture, certain Gnostic scriptures, my own appetite, and because you can pay a professional to cleanse you of demons with a chicken egg, and because the air filled first with the odor of cheap men's cologne, and then of human excrement over warming Pop-Tarts, and because one morning in Santa Monica, a woman emerging from a store was heard to say, "They don't have guns in the toy store." To which her man replied, "I know." He was seated beside a child. "We'll get it in another toy store," the man said. And because an ugly incense was emanating from House of Intuition, and because Kabir wore a peacock feather in his cap, and Krishna had one in his turban, and because King Solomon brought peacocks to Kiyim in a boat back from Tarshish, and because I fell down sobbing over a beaded cloth, and because what I had for so long failed to see, what I had ignored, mistaking it for ornament, was information hiding in plain sight, and because there was no way to touch what was converging on us, and because once there were oil pits near Arderica and a pitch spring on Zacynthus, and because Iris was the messenger of the gods I'd forgotten, and because the iridescence in the peacock was due to a complex photonic crystal, and so for the most part was sand, and likewise the stones to which desolate people increasingly communicated their wishes, and because glass was melted sand, and Johnny Cash was attacked by an ostrich, and because pens used to be made of feathers, and because Chopin and George Sand had been miserable on Majorca, and because there were dust storms on Mars, and sandstorms in China, and Israel was investing heavily in anti-desertification efforts, and because Papa Doc had shorn Haiti's mountains of trees, and when dust from Azerbaijan blew into Tbilisi, I lay with a nihilist in a fenced-in woods, and when strange lights appeared at the height of the spruces, there was dust on our tongues. And because I navigated by the pine cone in my skull, same as everybody else, and because a bird had alighted on the lectern of Bernie Sanders, and Mozart kept a sparrow as a pet, and because the mute son of Kenzaburo Oe learned speech from records of birdsong, and because of the bird friends of Odin and Massaw, and because the gizzards of fowl were iridescent, and likewise the pearl, and likewise the viral unicorn frappuccino, and because Big Sur was on fire, and a hot wind was blowing over the Henry Miller Library, and because in Paradise, California, people burned in their cars, and because the bullets kept flying, and because the relentless spread of stupidity was allegorized in Flaubert's novels by grains of sand, and because idiocy came down onto Baudelaire on the wind of a wing, and because the less we could agree, the more it seemed we were revolving into a gem. So I'm actually not going to read you one more poem. That is going to be the last poem.
So Tina's joining us to ask you some questions. Tina, you're muted.
The answer to question number one is this is not a jar of my own urine.
Aged.
That's not what this is.
Well, I previously saw what I thought was celery juice.
Matcha.
Matcha. Okay, looked like celery juice. And
What?
then I was going to ask you, are you an Anthony William fan?
What?
And then I was going to ask you, are you an Anthony William fan, medical medium?
Oh, that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a sucker for a lot of that stuff. I'm a real sucker. I feel like, I don't know if you noticed this, Tina, but I noticed that when 45 got elected, my interest in wellness went through the roof. And I think that the whole wellness industry is actually, like, it went hand in hand with this. I think for me, and I knew I sort of succumb to all kinds of idiotic fads. I'm not saying that the medical medium is that, but I noticed that I think it had to do with a kind of frantic fantasy of having more control over my body.
Yeah.
And I know it was directly connected with the sort of collapse of public space, with the sort of erosion of and the emulsification of what we understand public trust even to be. And so I think both for good and for ill, the idea of controlling my own body became like too much of an idea, like in 2016. So all the celery juice I drank was because of the president. I hate to say it.
I love that statement. That is a gorgeous, gorgeous statement. I almost
Perverted. It's a
I need to
horrible.
use that line. I need to use that somewhere, sometime in the future. Before the celery juice conversation, Ariana, I really wanted to thank you for sharing this beautiful human experience with us, for your beauty and your magnificence as one of our goddesses attending this festival. We truly appreciate it, and God, what an energy and what a spirit to have be a part of this. So I did want to say that first and foremost, and to experience that through such vulnerability. That first piece really, really struck me, and I felt, as a mother, I felt it deep in my soul and in my heart. So I really appreciate that piece. And I wanted to offer a few questions. And as I was sitting here, listening to that amazing reading, I had these questions pop into my mind late last night during a bout of insomnia. And I find it interesting how somehow it correlated to much of what you read. And I found myself needing and wanting to know what you feel it means to be a woman right now during these collective shifts that we're experiencing.
First of all, Tina, thank you, and thank you for this incredible festival with such wonderful poets. And also, I'm solidarity for the disrupted sleep. I've definitely experienced that this week, and also since I was 12, but certainly lately. I think a lot about this question that you asked, because I feel like it's even more, I feel like it's basically a schizophrenic situation to be a woman, and whether that's like woman identified, menstruator, feminine being, I think it's even almost more schizophrenic than ever. And in some ways, I think the ironies and the complexities of it are, the pressure I feel is on younger feminine beings, younger women, even more strongly, if that's even possible, than I have experienced it. I think that while we watch this drive towards state control of reproduction, basically, and then the idea that a woman's body can never be her own, the sort of angles of cruelty, of the ways that the stakes are, like the volume is turned up and the stakes are just made even more jagged. And also the ways that genuine now I'm getting off the topic. I'm like thinking about,
no, go where you need to go.
And I'm thinking about abortion because one of the things, one of the problems, right, with first and second wave feminism was that was that, you know, like the people who were its sort of telegenic leaders were these rich, more wealthy white women, right?
Right.
But
Right.
one of the rare moments of genuine class solidarity in the United States, in my opinion,
Mm-hmm.
is abortion rights, is Roe v. Wade, access to reproductive health care and the idea that this is made legal all across the land, because we all know that the rich daughters of those monsters, they will get their abortions.
Yes.
And they will get their abortions safely.
Yes.
The people who get sick and die, or who will be forced to carry babies to term when they've been raped, when they're in situations where their parents are not adults who are worthy of their trust, which is also something that happens.
Yes.
It's women of color and women without that kind of access to money and
Lower socioeconomic statuses. Yeah.
exactly. So there's something, one of the things about the ways that we're being divided is like through the reproductive system, and it's very perverse, it's very sick, it's very perverse, but it's just another way to split off the sort of, I'm sorry, this is like not what I was expecting to talk about.
That's okay. No, I love it. Please go.
But I also feel like, you know, when I was a teenager and like sort of first becoming an adult, and I feel like, how long ago was it that I last saw you, Tina? Like, it was a while ago, like 7, 8 years? It's been a while. I like, my sense of time is messed up, but like there's been some, you know, maturing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
When I was a younger woman, I really felt like my quote unquote freedom was, to the best of my understanding, just propaganda, like sloganeering. Like, I'd been told that I had rights. I'd been told that I could do quote unquote whatever, you know, I could become whatever I put my mind to. But there wasn't that much in the way of happy examples to build on. You know, my own mother is paranoid schizophrenic. You know, it's like you sort of had this a lot as far as like achieving female artists. A lot of them, you know, died broke, OD'd, were shut in, or wound up in the mental hospital. So that seemed like, okay, figuring out some new models for this is going to take some doing. But we are also sort of in this computer age, and so there's like aggressive pressure on the feminine to present itself in certain ways, and I feel like the freedom is through the roof, and the sort of pornographization, everything is pornography now.
Yeah, it's all an indulgence.
Yeah.
It's all indulgence, and in that indulgence, inherently, we find these oppressive forces that we need to cave into, and we find ourselves losing ourselves too.
I think we're in such a strange moment where one can go on, like you can there is more space for women in public than there has ever been, but there's also less of a public. Like, it's actually all this internal like subconscious nightmare. Like, actually what's become public space is like your worst nightmare. It's like nightmare zone. So that's not public space. And so I think that it's a very, very confusing time to be a feminine being, to be like of any gender, you know? Because the messaging is so utterly and aggressively contradictory. And we all have to move through the stream together. And I think there's a lot of devolving. that people participate in willingly, and that's also being, you know, launched against us in a full frontal attack. But you know, racial and class solidarity that came through Roe v. Wade is like, I wish I had sort of been able to more eloquently describe that, but it's like cutting off at the knees something that
Right.
that created a certain coherency that now just divides people in a more furious and more vicious way.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, I'm grateful that you took the route that you did with this. And there was something you said in there that spoke to another one of my wonderings into the wee hours. And just in terms of this new landscape that we're navigating, right? This new digital existence, universe, dimension, and how it's further evolving. And I can't help but to wonder where the arts are going to go from here. You know, you mentioned before feeling a sense of loss for that physical space that we love to create together, and that energy, that collective energy that we feed off of as artists and audience and spectators. And you know, I've been mourning this for a while myself, and I find myself apologizing to others and to my students, like, I want to be with you, but I can't. So insights or thoughts in terms of that?
Thank you for that question. I'm going to ask, so I'm going to answer a little bit, but I also am really interested to hear your thoughts, your answers to the same question, Tina, because, you know, I'm a poet because it's not a spectator's art. It doesn't work that way for me. I don't just want to say, I don't want to be in an echo chamber with myself. And I think that the thing that's very interesting about this particular art, which I think we're in a golden age of, like that's one of the things that's beautiful about this time, which has so many terrible things about it, is poetry is a mode of survival. It's the most democratic of the art forms, if you live in a relatively literate society, but we can all speak. So, you know, even if we're not in an inscription oriented experience of poetry, it's still living. Poetry existed long before writing existed. And this is how we find out who we are, and how we also find out what is really happening. I don't know. I'm very ill at ease in a body, and, you know, in America and on Earth, and I have to write poems, or I don't understand anything.
Right.
And one of the things about this screen interface, it's a blessing to have something.
Yeah.
But I feel that one of the things that's being asked of us is that we develop other means of communication. And I mean telepathic. I mean resonant. So like maybe other forms of making music, sound, vibration, maybe other modes of other ways or modes of being together. Than like today I just was thinking, like, why do we, like, it's just so weird that we have this head with a face on it, and like we're doing, you know, and in this we're being deprived of the rest of this thing that we all get in order, like, to be people.
Right.
I don't know why it has to have a mouth, and I don't know, you know, I don't know, somebody maybe knew at some point, but I don't. And it's just this funny thing that, like,
Right.
so much relating through this head. And like, it's, I feel, you know, one of the things the sun says in this book, and I didn't say it, the sun said it, but the sun said, the time of spectacle will pass.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wonder about ways that art might become less spectacular in the ways that it has been in the past,
Mm.
and maybe more subtle, maybe more, maybe it functions as forms of inner experience that we get, like in the sense, in the way that love is an inner experience. And
Right.
the plug for the love workshop, which follows this talk, if you want to hear more about that. So I'll stop babbling about it and we can continue in the next hour. But Tina, what do you think is going to happen to art?
In the interim of feeling that sense of loss, you know, during that transition, because I do find myself being a very physical person. I feel things like at 200%. So when I share physical space with someone, I often sense strongly what they're thinking. I feel their emotions and, you know, the eye contact and the exchange of physical energy. Even though if I'm standing all the way across the room and you're standing over there, there's still something, you know, we're still attached. There's no separation between us. I still feel you. So in the morning of that, and as an educator, mostly is where I found this heightening of these other senses, as you were describing. And, you know, I realized that I just had to develop those senses and fine tune into that new station, so to say. In order to feel the virtual energy, in order to feel those wavelengths being transmitted through that distance, you know, from your screen to mine. So that's something I actually very, very recently noticed. And I think it's quite beautiful. You know, I think it's a gorgeous connection from the inner self to the other inner selves. So I have to agree with you in terms of that heightening for sure. So I can't say exactly what will come of it and how it's going to come of it, but I know that as a collective and as individuals, we will further develop our experience of spirit, of energy, if that makes sense.
I agree. I think it's a matter of our survival depends on it. So
Yes.
I just want to say briefly, because I know we're over time, I guess. Dana just alerted me that we're late. So
Have a break.
but if you want to join for the workshop, we'll sort of be developing right out of this conversation, and there'll be a little bit more space to say more about
Yeah,
all.
perfect. I'd love to. Yes, absolutely. Gorgeous.
Ariana, thank you so much. This was absolutely brilliant. The reading was beautiful, and your talk was so inspiring, so moving. So thank you so much. All
See
right.
you guys really soon.
See ya.